This kind of caught us off guard today. Nobody's really expecting a deal to be made here, but it was. So this is a lot of fun. Ross, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for the time today.
Hey, Dustin, Tom, how are we doing, fellas? Really happy to be on with you.
Man,
all right.
Jeff Jackson just keeps giving us content every week, so it's awesome. As soon as I saw the trade today, I was like, yes, 5 straight days of talking about American Hockey League trade, but here we are. Tell us a little bit about Järventie. Why would he be a guy who needs a fresh start right now from the Ottawa Senators?
Well, the timing worked out pretty well for us too, Dusty. We just had the head coach of the Belleville Sens, David Bell, on with us this morning, and after we finished recording, I said, man, I forgot to ask you about Roby. And he kind of smirked like, hey, he maybe already knew by then. But look, Roby was a guy who, when he was drafted, was one of the youngest players in the draft. He's an August birthday. So, look, kind of like with Bourgault, where a lot of people point out the guy who went next, Wyatt Johnston. We had a bit of that similar situation in Ottawa because they drafted Tim Stützle third that year. And then his best buddy from the German team, JJ Peterka, goes 1 pick later. So a lot of Sens fans were comparing the two, and it's like, oh, man, Peterka had 28 goals last year. What could he have done on Stützle's wing? So is that why he needs a fresh start? Probably not. But where I do think it will benefit Järventie is you kind of get the wheels stuck in mud at the AHL level when you're in the same spot for that long. It's a grind. He just finished his 4th season in the American Hockey League, and he's still only 22 years old. So he was the youngest player in the league the first year. And you know what I mean? Just eventually you just need to spread your wings. He got that taste last year in the NHL, didn't do a whole lot with it, but I like the upside of this player. Heck, he had 20 points in 22 games when he was healthy at the start of last year. Another issue, knee problem. That's what knocked him out for the rest of the year. And from what I'm hearing, he has not skated in full gear since. So,
and when did that injury occur? I'm just curious.
22 games into the season, so you're looking early November, maybe mid-November. Heard he's trying to get on the ice with tracksuit right now and then kind of working his way back. So will he be at training camp? I can't answer that question, but he still has so much runway that with him, you're getting a guy who we call him Red Light Roby when we were following him with Eels and Liga.
Hey.
Like, this guy can shoot the puck, man. He's got a wicked release, and when he's on his game, like we always had him as like a 20-goal potential guy at the next level.
20 points in 22 games until that knee injury, Ross. And he's a left winger. He's a bigger body guy. Like, how would you describe his style of play where, Oiler fans might be going, well, he just gave a first rounder in Bourgault with offensive upside for what? What would you tell them?
Yeah, you're getting a guy where when it clicks, you can see enormous potential. He's a big, lanky kid. He's about 6'3", 6'4", but he's definitely not touching 200 pounds yet. So I think there's still room for him to get physically stronger. And if that's the case, that's kind of what's missing from his game is kind of that down low battle board play. He has so much talent, though. I mentioned our conversation with David Bell. He said he's one of the most talented players he's ever coached just on pure skill alone. Says these little plays, like he'll use his butt end to lift a stick in a battle or whatnot. Just like little kind of intricate plays that, don't show up if you're just watching the highlights, but that create good opportunities for his team. Former Senator that he reminded us of is Mike Hoffman, where it's like all of a sudden you'll be like, he didn't have a great game, and then he has 2 goals. You're just like, he's not always on away from the puck, but all of a sudden you give him a little bit of space, and obviously we know the playmaking talent that the Oilers have. There's definitely potential for him to pop off, I think, as an offensive point producer, where he might give a bit back defensively, but if he does kind of evolve the way that the Oilers expect him to, he'll be an offensive contributor and a power play one-timer guy on his offside.
What's the current status of like the Sens pipeline? How would you describe that?
Under construction. How about that, Dusty? Right? Like they got the new ownership comes in. They bring in their own guys. You guys know Steve Staios well, and it's kind of, not a surprise that he goes to his old stomping grounds. And, obviously he's got intimate knowledge of these players who he watched, I'm assuming, for a year or two while he was with the Oilers. And I think they're trying to massage the pipeline into what they look for. 2 years ago, when the Chychrun trade went down, Pierre Dorion, who talk about great for content, boys. I mean, this guy had enough content for days. So Dorion was very quick to say, hey, in the Coyotes trade where they gave up a first and 2 seconds for Chychrun, that Sogard and Roby Jarventie were off limits, Tyler Clevin as well. So he had him as an untouchable. Then you get the new management in, and all of a sudden, 10 months later, he's on the move. So I think what they're trying to do is build an identity to what they want the team to look at going forward. And I think that you're looking for more kind of I know this trade doesn't necessarily indicate that, but you look at their draft, the average of their guys drafted was 6'4", 210. Like, they want big guys in the system that can skate and move. And I think that there was a little bit of runway left with Roby. I got to be honest, boys. Like, I'm a little surprised that they pulled the trigger here. I don't know if they know something about the injury that I don't, but I think on a pure talent perspective, Ottawa's giving up a pretty promising player in this deal.
Interesting. And that would, I mean, we saw it with Connor Brown. It took a full calendar year for his knee to get better. If he's dealing with this same situation, Ross, and he needs time to get back on the ice, and if he's trying to get back on with a tracksuit, then this season might even be a bit of a write-off, and we're not talking about Järventie till training camp 2025. So, big body guy, but gangly, skinny. So we're talking about a couple of years of patience with this guy is what you would tell people around oil country.
Yeah, exactly. Like, don't expect it to be make or break next year.
Right.
But hey, sorry, boys. I was just pulling up here my our latest top 10 prospects for the Sens. And we had Järventie at number 5 in February. So, like, you know, middle of the pack in a prospect pool that maybe doesn't have as much top end talent. But yeah, I would say look at the age and don't look at the draft year, because him and Bourgault, who went one draft later, like, they were a month away from being in the same draft. So don't look at it like you're giving up a younger asset and, oh, he's already above the hill. I think it could take 2 or 3 more years before Järventie really kind of finds his stride, because the hardest thing coming over to the smaller ice is those little zone plays with the battles and all that. So that's where he's got the most work to do. And of course, defensively. But if you're looking at this trade just on tools, it evaluates pretty high on the Oilers' end.
Can I follow up with this one for you, Ross? With Järventie, and we've seen this with some Euros, they come over for a little bit, they give it a shot. If they feel like they didn't get a fair crack, they go back to Europe. Do you get the sense that Järventie is the type of guy that would follow that path, or he would have the patience to stick around and put in the time in North America to try to get that shot in the NHL?
That's a very good question, Tom. And I think my answer to you would be his track record shows me that he is willing, right? Being able to battle through as many seasons in the American Hockey League. He's already played 136 AHL games.
Yeah.
That's super impressive for a guy that's not even 22 for another 3 weeks. Like, I think that you're already he's already gone this far. It would be kind of a shame for him to pull the plug at this point. And he just had his first taste of NHL games where it didn't go his way, right? A -5 in 7 games, just 1 assist. I know there was bigger problems than him on the Senators at that point in time, but certainly he looks back at it and goes, hey, I need to do better when I get my next opportunity. He's the type of guy, and I know some people have completely different coaching styles, but if I was penciling him into a training camp lineup, I'd put him with one of the big playmakers just to even get his confidence back coming off of that injury if he is healthy for camp. I know you don't want to disrupt the chemistry too much and what your NHL top 9 is going to be, but even just as a little test run to see, because again, he's got the experience in North America and he does have the pure God-given ability that he should be able to produce points, whether it's on the power play or at 5-on-5. So a long-winded way of saying I think he's put too much concentration calories into making the NHL. I think he's going to stick it out at least a couple more seasons.
Ross Levitan with us here on the Oil Stream. He's from Locked On Sens. Nielson and Gazzola with the Oil Stream, presented to you by Boston Pizza. Overall, Sens off season so far. What's the vibe been like over there, and what's the reaction been from the fans?
Boys, we're going on our 3rd straight offseason championship. Forget the Stanley Cup Finals. We got the offseason championships. 3rd time's the charm,
nice.
Right? But other than the last 2 years, right, they make the splashy DeBrincat trade at the draft in 22. Then in 23, everybody's still riding high off picking up Jacob Chychrun at the deadline. It's like, okay, enough of the lipstick and makeup moves. Now let's get the gritty, get the kind of veteran presence. On paper, they lost the Chychrun trade. There's no doubt about that. Trading him for a 33, too soon to be 34-year-old defenseman in Nick Jensen, and only getting a 3rd-round pick. But what they gave up for him under the previous management, kind of a sunk cost at this point. They're hoping that it's going to be more reliable than they've had in the past. Chychrun put up his best offensive season, was also a -30. So it was kind of like, hey, you're giving, but you're taking, whereas I think they just want the internal growth of the Sandersons, the Stutzlas, and so on and so forth down that list to take their own next steps. Like Tim Stützle, this might be the wildest stat in the NHL last year. Tim Stützle had 1 power play goal. One power play goal, and it was against the Sharks.
Doesn't
against
count.
The worst
Doesn't
team
count.
in the league.
Yeah.
that to me is just mind-boggling. So they need him to be back to his 90-point self to take a next step. And I mean, we talk about it with Edmonton all the time, and in Ottawa too. You need good goaltending. Linus Ullmark is the best bet that they've made since Craig Anderson, right? They swung and missed on Matt Murray, Cam Talbot, and Jonas Korpisalo, but all of them had sketchy track records in their own different way. Linus Ullmark's a horse I think that I'm willing to bet on at least, but I've been hurt before. Maybe I'm just ready to do it again.
The thing I wonder, though, is like, what do you bet? Are you betting on a playoff spot, or are you betting on close to a playoff spot?
You know what? Let's get past November. And I think that's been the Achilles heel the last number of years, right? They're out of it so quickly that they get these faux runs in December. They had a run at one point during last season where they're like 17-4-3, and they didn't move at all in the standings. That's like a 20-game sample. They're so far out of it at the start. We said, we spun zone it this way on Locked On Sens. We said, look, you haven't made playoffs in 7 years. We're going in with 4 series. We're breaking the season down into 7-game chunks to start the season, and they have to be above 500 at the end of it. Like, I'm not asking for first place. Yeah. Let's just at least play meaningful games into the new year and go from there. Because the Atlantic Division, I mean, Florida, Boston, Toronto, Tampa. It's been that way for the last how many years? Buffalo, Detroit, Ottawa just knocking on the door, but
can't get in.
No.
Yeah.
Knocked. They're not banging down the door at all. And they just, every year we have that. It's like the third summer. Which one of these 3 teams is going to take the step? Nobody has taken the door down. So I like Ottawa in that trio of teams. I think Detroit's almost there. They need their prospects to really take a step. And Buffalo, I really don't understand. You guys are going to love Savoy. But I think that overall, you're hoping for playoffs, but I mean, I've struck out twice, boys. I'm not predicting it again.
1 year under Andlauer, if that. And like you said, Steve Staios, who left the Oilers organization. How about brick and mortar as well? What's the reception been like for Staios and Andlauer, and then getting that new arena downtown Ottawa, which is way, way better than Canada?
Yeah, way better. And you guys would know what the kind of reward is of having that new arena, the excitement. Now, of course, there's a nostalgic factor. I grew up going to the games out in Canada, and you get used to the 40-minute trip each way. But, of course, it's going to change the impact of the city. You even hear guys, Nick Jensen and David Perron, 2 of Ottawa's offseason acquisitions, they were like, look, I mean, Perron probably less because he grew up in Quebec, but they're like, look, when we come to Ottawa, we drive through cornfields. We get to a hotel on a golf course in the middle of nowhere. We go to the rink. It's already dark out at 5 o'clock. And then we get out of town. So it's like you're not showing off your city, which is a beautiful downtown. Lots going on. I think that it's one of the most underrated places in Canada. But when it comes to recruiting, you got nothing going on out there. So from that standpoint, I think it's huge. And Michael Andlauer, I mean, it's one of those where the bar was set pretty low when he came in. But of course, there's a ton of hope. And I think he's delivered, right? He was really passionate in his press conference when they stripped that first-round pick off of them for the Evgeny Dadonov trade debacle 2 years later. I think he's really kind of spoken for the city, and he's done a good job of bringing the Gatineau, Hull, the Quebec side over, because it's a part of the reason why when the Habs come to Ottawa, it is just a sea of blue and red. So I think they're trying to do their best to outreach over to that side of the bridge and kind of grow the Senators fan base in and of itself. But of course, the best way to do that, you know better than everyone, it's you got to win hockey games, and they just haven't been able to do it.
That hotel lobby bar has the worst jazz I've ever heard, and I don't know jazz, but that was bad.
You see a couple of the teams, usually they're run by the Lou Lamoriellos or the guys who have been around the block. They'll come downtown and stay at the Chateau Laurier or at the Westin.
That's where it's at.
Right, like it's just, especially in February, like you guys know when the nights are long, the days are short. It's like it gets depressing out in the cornfields.
That would suck. Ross, this has been great, man. Before we let you go, I saw somebody over in the YouTube chat says, let's get to the important questions. I'd like to know who those bobbleheads are on the shelf in the background. Who do you got? Who do you got behind you there?
I got Brady and Timmy here. I'll show you. They got Timmy's hair's incredible. Right?
He's got a lot of room for expansion of the bobblehead wall here, though.
Well, I just moved, so I've been rolling in through this. The Sens
boy.
The Ottawa firefighters were cool enough to give us this. It's the Sens win prop last year.
Okay,
so they
that's
handed
cool.
That out. So shout out to the firefighters. And I mean, look at the flow on this guy.
Oh my God, beautiful.
Hey?
As someone who calls himself Tino Vasilino, I respect that flow very, very much.
That looks nice.
Oh yeah, look
well
at
done.
That. So Sharp there. And he needs a big year. I know a lot of fantasy playing fans that were pretty disappointed with the only 18 goals from Stützle. And I thought he was just scratching the surface. He had a bit of an injury he was dealing with early in the year. And I don't know if it took his shot right away from him, but they need a bounce back for him if there's going to be any hope of playoff hockey in Ottawa. That's for sure.
Excellent, Ross. We appreciate the time, man. Once again, how often are you dropping Locked On Sens? Pretty much every day?
5 days a week, boys. You know the grind. Doesn't matter. It's July. We're having lots of great guests. And, like I said, it's just kind of resetting everything into next season. And we're going for third-time off-season champs. So hopefully they can roll this into the season instead. Really appreciate you guys having me, Tom, Dustin. And, I'm a big fan of the show and love what you guys are doing. So keep up the great work. And next time Sens and Oilers get together, would love to do it again.
Yeah, let's do it. We definitely will. Thanks a lot, Ross.